I absolutely love that song that we just sang, Faithful Love, and I managed to not have a breakdown and start crying this time. So, yeah. But Christ really does have so much love for all of us, and that's part of what we are talking about going through Luke as Justin leads us through, talking about Christ and his love for us and how we can focus on that love together as a congregation. So I'll be reading a little bit from Luke that Justin is going to talk about this morning. Let us all stand as we listen to the word, the gospel of our Savior. Luke 9:18, verses 18 through 27. Once when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others still that one of the prophets of long ago has come back to life. But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "God's Messiah." Jesus strictly warned them not to tell this to anyone. And then he said, "The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and he must be killed on the third day and be raised to life." Then he said to them all, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of heaven." Let's be seated, and here's Justin.
Thank you, Will. Good morning to everyone. We're continuing through our journey through the Gospel of Luke, and we've made it to chapter 9. And actually, last week we did a little bit into chapter 10, but we're backtracking into chapter 9 here to cover some really important stuff. And today might be the most central of all. And the goal of our year and our series is to focus on Jesus and discipleship. And this is the heart of it right here, about taking up our cross and following him. I was, what was it, Thursday? Josiah and Hazel both had a game. Hazel on the north side, a softball game, and Josiah playing middle school baseball on the south side of town. And so our family had to be in two places at once, and Tabitha was at the softball game with Hazel, and I was with Simeon at Josiah's middle school baseball game. And so Simeon and I are sitting there watching Josiah in his game, and they had a pitcher come in, and I saw about 4 pitches, and I said, "No way, is this true?" And I started leaning over to Simeon before the pitch was thrown, and I would try to guess what pitch the guy was going to throw. Is it a softball, or is it an off-speed slider, something like that? And I kept getting it right every single time. And Simeon thought I was awesome. So I was testing a theory. And I thought, this guy is tipping his pitches. He does something to, if you're paying attention, he does something different when he throws a fastball versus when he throws a slider before the pitch. And I saw that when he's throwing a fastball, he would be in the set position, and he wouldn't spend a lot of time, and there wouldn't be any movement. He would just be here and then begin his pitch. when he was throwing off speed, he would take a little bit extra of a half second, and his elbow would go out a little bit, and there would be a little movement of the hand, change in his grip, and then he would throw every single time. So I had it. I knew. I could see he's tipping his pitches. You can tell when he's throwing a fastball versus when he's throwing a slider. So I got up and did what, as a coach, I think is not my favorite, when a parent comes over and starts talking to the people. But I broke the rule. I'm sorry. I'm a hypocrite. But I just went behind the dugout and whispered through the fence to Josiah and his friend that were there. They're the only two 7th graders on the 7th and 8th grade team, so the other people can fend for themselves. But I said, hey, this guy's tipping his pitches, and I told him what he does, and it's every time. And I said, watch this, watch him pitch. And I said, did you see that? Did you see what I'm talking about? Yeah, I got it. Okay. So they both got up there, and I think they both got a walk off of it. So that was good. Now, the hardest thing to do in all sports is to hit a baseball, right? I think we've been over that before. There's only one thing that can make it easier, which is if I know ahead of time what kind of pitch is coming, right? That can make it a little bit easier. It still is the hardest thing, but it makes it like slightly less difficult if I can anticipate if this is a fastball or this is a slider or a changeup or something like that, okay? Still very difficult. But to know ahead of time helps you to prepare and to be ready to respond to what's coming to you, right? And again, that doesn't make it easy at all, but it is at least helpful for your mindset and ready to succeed in that. And I was thinking about that today with this text about Jesus and the cross and discipleship. It's kind of like Jesus is coming over to us and saying, here's what it's going to look like. Here's what you're going to get. And that in no way makes it easier at all. It's difficult, the road that he says that discipleship takes us on. It doesn't make it any easier for us to know, well, this is the road of the cross. It's about rejection. It's about trial. It's about difficulty. It's about suffering. It's about crucifixion. It's about denying oneself. But to know ahead of time, this is what we're signing up for. Makes it, we can prepare our hearts and minds to succeed on that road and to follow Jesus as he leads us, which is really what this text is saying. Jesus is off in Luke 9, verse 18, saying his prayers alone, the text says in verse 18. He was praying alone, but the disciples were in proximity. And then although the text doesn't say it, you kind of get a sense that in his time of prayer and communion with the Father, this question was on his heart, on his mind, about who people say that he is. Right in the middle of his time of prayer, he just speaks and addresses his disciples, saying, who do people say that I am? And they answered him, saying, John the Baptist, Elijah, others say one of the prophets of old risen again. And now we get to the real question, who do you say that I am? And Peter, without a lot of the other stuff that you get in other gospel accounts of this episode, it's just a straightforward answer. You are the anointed of God, the Christ of God. And Jesus, as he often would instructed them not to tell this to anyone. And then he launches into this description of the cross, this description of the path that he is on, and the call, the summons, the challenge that he gives to his disciples. He says about himself, the Son of Man must suffer many things, must be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, must be killed and raised on the third day. And he was saying to all of them at the same time, if anyone wishes to come after me, they must deny himself, take up their cross, and follow me. You've come along with me all this time through these journeys and forays into discipleship. If you truly want to follow me, Jesus says, then you're going to get on the path of the cross and follow me. If you really, truly wish to follow me, then you will deny yourself and take up your cross and get in line behind me. What does it mean to take up our cross? Well, that's literally it means I'm going to my own death, my literal own physical death. And I don't think that's out of the question for what he's talking about. But the question is, why would someone be crucified for following Jesus? Why would Jesus himself be crucified? When we take up our cross, it is, first of all, a public alignment with Jesus. A public alignment with Jesus and an embracing of all of the social consequences that come with it. And in various times, in various places throughout history, those consequences are X or Y or Z or A, B, or C. But whatever those consequences are, I'm willing to be publicly aligned with Jesus and suffer the social consequences that come with it. To say Jesus is Messiah and to say Jesus is Lord is enough. It's polarizing enough. It's controversial enough. In this day, in the first century, for Christians throughout the Roman Empire, and anywhere else throughout the world, including our own time and place. Jesus is Messiah. Jesus is Lord. Do we understand what that means? What we're saying, what we're living out? If Jesus is Lord, that means he's actually above everything else. Every form of power, every person in power, every form of authority in our world. More than governments, more than anything, more than any world powers. Jesus is Lord, and he is my Lord, and he is Lord over them. That means my obedience and my loyalty goes to him over and against anyone else. A lot of times we can get our picture of discipleship can shrink to say, well, Jesus' vision for discipleship was, to live out our faith in a context and through the filter of this or that political bent. In our country, Republicans or Democrats. And whichever one of those you might be, or if you're neither, I think the point is that the lordship of Jesus supersedes all of that. Christian faith isn't meant to be lived out through the powers of the world. It's supposed to be antithetical to it. That's why this is controversial. That's why you suffer social consequences. Not because I'm a Christian Republican or a Christian Democrat, because Jesus is Lord, and he is above all of that, and my loyalty and my faithfulness go to that. He steps outside the system and invites us to do the same. That's the reality of Jesus' lordship. So that's the first thing, and that's not really about politics. It's just saying whatever framework we have in our lives, the lordship of Jesus actually matters. That is actually, if we believe that and live it out, it changes our experiences in life. And there are consequences to stepping outside the power systems of our world and saying, Jesus is Lord. And when we take up our cross, we're saying, I'm willing to live that out and to suffer the consequences and not play the games of the powers of the world anymore. And in denying ourselves at the same time, the pathway to taking up our cross begins with denial, right? Deny oneself and then take up your cross and follow him. Denial is that willingness to participate and share in the same fate as Jesus. Denial is the opposite of self-preservation. Denial is saying, I'm willing to share in the sufferings of Christ, to participate in those. So that my life, the theme with the cross at the center is not that Jesus goes to the cross and then I don't have to. It's that Jesus goes to the cross so that I can as well. That's the expectation. There is nowhere in the New Testament that assumes Jesus goes to the cross so we don't have to. The entire thing is about we following Jesus and he leading us both to the cross. Here Jesus says, take up your cross. Paul's entire ministry and philosophy, I am crucified with Christ, being conformed to his death over and over again. There is this cross that's at the heart of Christian discipleship. And we're all there. Now, we might not be accomplishing the same cosmic effects that Jesus is while he's on the cross. But we're certainly expected to be there with him. Because that is the road of discipleship. And it's there that we have communion with Christ, sharing, participating in his sufferings, being conformed to his death. We are together with him. So taking up our cross and denying is first of all about stepping outside of the systems of this world and suffering the consequences. It involves so much more. We could make a list of a million things about what that looks like when you actually are outside of the system and Jesus is Lord. But even the small things in life that have really difficult consequences sometimes, doing the right thing. We've all done the right thing and paid for it, right? It's not easy when you have suffer negative consequences just for doing the thing that was right. Telling the truth even when it hurts. Choosing integrity. And because of that, losing a great opportunity for personal gain. Loving and being hated in return or rejected in return. Doing good things that go unnoticed. These are just a few things that I wrote down here, but there's so many more. This is the path of the cross. It's self-emptying. It's a realignment of our identity. My identity is in Christ now and not in self. So the whole point of Jesus' call here, and he says as much here, whoever wishes to save their life will lose it. Verse 24, whoever loses their life for my sake, they will save it. What does it profit you if you participate in the system and gain all the things you can, but forfeit your own self? And so we see the key here, verse 26, whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Jesus is calling for a walk that is unashamed. That's how Paul begins Romans. I am not ashamed. To live out this life without shame, without fear. To do the right thing, to say the right thing, choosing integrity and love and goodness, and facing the consequences. To confess Jesus as Lord and have that be a reality in our life. And discipleship is not easy then. It's the hardest path we could have chosen. It's the hardest thing that you can do in life, to sign up for Christianity, to say, I want to follow Jesus, that Jesus is my Lord, that I want to deny myself. It seems almost antithetical to what we're born to be and to do. To become a selfless person who's willing to die, who's willing to follow Jesus to the cross. It's not an easy road. And if we're honest, sometimes we get off that road. Sometimes we don't walk it. Sometimes we are ashamed. Sometimes we want to avoid rejection. Sometimes we try to avoid the pain and the consequences that come with discipleship. And if these disciples would have taken Jesus' words seriously, there would have been, 10 or 12 other crosses around Jesus on that Friday. But there were none, except for 2 criminals. No other crosses. Only abandonment, rejection, denial. And he was alone. And Peter knows that pain, and we know that pain too. Failure to take up our cross and follow Jesus. Even though we said we were going to do it, even though we signed up for it, sometimes things get too difficult and we fail. And Jesus understands that too. That's why this text that we read today in Hebrews 12 is so important. If we move over to Hebrews 12 here. This is an NIV. Up there is probably a New American Standard, but they're pretty close. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. See, these Hebrew Christians, they are having a tough go at it too. It's not easy for them either. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of suffering. They're trying to avoid the pain of discipleship. And the author here is encouraging them over and over again to stick with it. And here's why. Here's the gospel. Here's the good news. Verse 2, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That phrase in verse 2, what in this translation says, author and perfecter of our faith. In the text we read this morning, you might have noticed it said, pioneer and perfecter of our faith. This is the Greek word archegos. And that's precisely what it means. It means the one who goes first. I think pioneer is the perfect way to translate that. Jesus is the one who goes first. He takes up his cross and he walks that road first. And then we go behind. He doesn't go there instead of us. He's going there ahead of us and we follow behind. But that's not the only thing that Jesus is. He's not just the pioneer who goes to the cross first, and then we come after him. The Hebrew writer says he is also the perfecter. Not only is Jesus on the front end of the discipleship, leading the way to the cross, showing us by example how to do it, but he also comes around on the back end and perfects all of the weaknesses of our own attempts to follow him. Just as he does for Peter after the resurrection, when he's having that important moment with Peter, asking him, do you love me? There's this reintegration, there's this restoration of a relationship and forgiveness and a commission, a trusting of Peter to carry out discipleship again, even though he failed in the worst possible way. That's Jesus perfecting Peter's faith. He's not just the pioneer. He is also the perfecter. In all of our failings, in all of those times where our cross is not there next to Jesus' own, where we've shrunk away in fear or shame or selfishness or pride or arrogance, when we have abandoned him to save ourselves, Jesus, the pioneer, is also the perfecter. And he takes all of those various attempts and failures at faith, and he sanctifies them, makes them holy to God, and makes us beautiful in the sight of God. Makes us holy. Makes us righteous. Makes us pure. Makes us good. Makes us faithful. He perfects us. And that is the good news. Jesus calls us to the cross, and he goes before us, and he perfects us along the way. I want to end, don't worry about this one, PJ, but it's in Hebrews chapter 2. Just a couple verses out of here. In bringing many sons to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, it was fitting that he should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through suffering. Both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them as such. Both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. And so Jesus is not ashamed to call them as such. Praise be to God for the author and pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who calls us his family. Let us rejoice in that this morning. Let's stand and sing.